NCAA track and field championships occurring in Eugene, Oregon this week. The women's track and field championships begin today, and this all feels like a backdrop for stories and paying respect and homage to one of the, if not the greatest head coach in the history of maybe any collegiate sport, John McDonnell, who passed away earlier this week. And Bob Holt covers Arkansas athletics for the Democrat-Gazette, a good friend of the show, as you know, and he writes a lot of track as well. And so I'm really happy to have Bob on today. Bob, really appreciated your Tuesday story about John McDonnell. It does seem to me that as a media member that covered this program, you also appreciated Coach McDonnell as a man too.
Oh, he was a great person. He was one of the first coaches I got to know. I guess I got the job here in the summer of '81, and I remember reading a Nate Allen column. I was trying to read everything I could so I know what was going on with the Razorbacks. And Nate had a column about how Arkansas won 8 straight Southwest Conference championships in cross country, and I remember thinking, "Wow, that's really incredible." And then that was just the tip of the iceberg, as it turned out. I think John went on to win 34 straight conference championships in cross country in the Southwest Conference, and that carried over into the SEC, that domination. And I remember talking to John. He obviously did a lot of great things. He won a lot of national championships and triple crowns, a lot of indoor and outdoor track titles, a lot of those cross country titles, conference and nationally. But I think one time he told me that he was most proud of that cross country streak just because of the consistency it showed. Just year after year. We're talking about generational domination there with over 30 years.
It hits me when I never met Coach McDonnell, and I won't be someone who pretends that I'd paid much attention to track to begin with. But as I read your story and I read other remembrances of him, it seems that people said he could be hard on his athletes every once in a while. But I think it also seemed to me that he was willing to listen to them, because I know, and I read your piece, he said that one of the major reasons that he felt that he got the program over the hump of being in the top 5 but never finishing first overall in the nation to then becoming the national champion program they became was taking his foot off the pedal. And it took listening to his athletes to hear their reaction from that to get him to think about it.
Yeah, I think something all great coaches have in common, whether it's college, professional, whatever the sport might be, is they really know how to deal with people. In baseball, professional baseball, you have a manager, and that name is, because he manages people, he manages a roster. Obviously, coaches do it the same, and I don't care, John McDonnell, Vince Lombardi, Tony La Russa, whoever you want to name, they know how to manage people and personalities, and I think John was really good at knowing what made people tick. Certain people need, pat on the back, certain people might need a kick in the butt, And I think John knew how to push those buttons. And another thing I think great coaches have in common, I always thought this about Nolan Richardson, is they got more out of players than maybe those players thought they had to give, and they just made guys want to work so hard for them, And John was a great, motivator and great recruiter. Obviously, he had workouts. I remember him showing me some workouts. He had, workouts probably going back to the 70s that he was still doing in the 2000s. But technically, he just knew everything about workouts for the distance guys. And so he just really had everything you'd want from a coach. To me, he just had it down to an art form.
Bob, I'm doing the show today from Baum Walker, which we call the best college ballpark in America. Next door, attached to the Fowler Center, is the Tyson Track Center, which is called the fastest track in the world. And it seems that Coach McDonnell changed the sport of indoor track by being able to have this building built, and specifically this arena, this indoor arena for track. What changed the sport of indoor track from the Tyson Track Center and Coach McDonnell's influence in building it?
Well, of course, I think it was back in John, a lot of schools, as you might imagine, made a run trying to hire him. People might not remember that back in the early 80s, Texas El Paso had won Triple Crowns and was a really great track program. They tried to hire him at different times. LSU tried to hire him. I know in the late 90s, Oregon had kind of fallen off the pedestal of being the top program. They tried to hire him. And I don't think John ever seriously would entertain leaving Northwest Arkansas because it was his program. I think he loved living here. But, you also want to be appreciated. And sometimes it takes other people trying to hire you for you to be maybe rewarded, compensated like you should be. He did a lot of good things here with when the facilities weren't that good. The outdoor track was okay, but it certainly wasn't anything great. And they didn't really have, they had what's now the tennis center. They built that in the early 80s, but that was serviceable, but it really wasn't great. And then one thing, the Tyson family stepped in when Oregon was making overtures to John and made a big financial commitment to build a really first-rate indoor track facility. And then in 2000, they didn't renovate the outdoor track. They tore it down and built up what's now, one of the best outdoor tracks in the country, And obviously when Oregon just opened up, they spent about $300 million or whatever of Phil Knight's money mostly. So that's just sort of on another level. But now Arkansas's got really great facilities. Yeah, indoor track, Arkansas really dominated that. I think they won like 12 championships in a row, and some of those were over in Oklahoma City at the old Marriott, if anybody's ever been over there. But then Arkansas started hosting it. So that really took it to another level. If you think of this past year in the pandemic, Arkansas hosted, I think it was 4 American track league meets, which is professional, because a lot of those athletes, they didn't have a place to go compete, unless they wanted to go to Europe or something. And so that's really one of the top indoor facilities in the country, for track. It's a track. It's not some building that they convert to a track. It's a track facility. And so I think that really raised the bar for indoor track, and they've had, pro meets here and national championships, and so, that was a huge deal, a huge commitment from the Tyson family, and they renovated it this year. And a lot, people didn't get to go, unfortunately, because they didn't allow fans. But, I was in there, we've been in there for, the baseball, because they have a setup over there, and you can see how nice it is.
Bob Holt joining us here on Halftime. Bob, keeping it with this indoor track center, or the Tyson Center, just for a second. Phil was mentioning yesterday, like when you look at Bob Stadium and all the trophies and all the conference championships and tournament titles, all that good stuff, it's a good amount of trophies. And then you walk into the Tyson Center, and I've personally never been in there, so if I'm misspeaking, tell me. But and Phil was mentioning how incredible it is, the vast majority and just the sheer number of the trophy case, and the difference between Baum Stadium and the Tyson Center for what this track team has been able to accomplish is just it's mind-boggling to me, and I hadn't even seen it. And I'm sure my mouth would just be agape when you walk in just to see the success that John McDonnell in this track program had throughout his entire tenure here at Arkansas.
Well, yeah, if you go in there and look up, there's just banner after banner after banner hanging down, because of all the championships Arkansas has won, nationally and at the conference level. Of course, they have, the big trophy cases. And with between the men and the women, it's now 46. Lance Harder has been the women's coach here since 1990. He used to use the line that people were always shocked that he could ever get a tan because he was always in John McDonnell's shadow. And he didn't mean that negatively. He just meant, John cast a big shadow. Great people do. And it's pretty incredible. It's just mind-boggling. There'll never be anybody. There was never anybody like John before him. There'll never be anybody like that again. There are a lot of great coaches at different levels. I remember, it was after covering John for several years. It was hard to come up with new material, and I remember reaching out to John Wooden. He was retired, but you could call UCLA and they'd give you his number. You had to be legitimate, hopefully a media person. But I remember calling John Wooden. He very nicely called me back and talked about John McDonnell, and he knew about John McDonnell even out there in Los Angeles, and just talking about how impressed he was by what John had done. And John Wooden's one of the greatest winners of all time in college basketball. So, and then Lance and Chris Duggan were talking the other day about the international impact John had. They'd have athletes go, to international meets in Italy, and people would be calling the hogs. Lance said when people found out he was from Arkansas, he might be helping coach international team. They say, John McDonnell. I mean, John McDonnell really made Fayetteville not just a track capital for the SEC or for the U.S., but really from around the world, and Arkansas's had great athletes from around the world because of that.
Bob, if I had to phrase this to you in one, obviously we know how you just brought up John Wooden and referring to John McDonnell as the GOAT. If there was one word, I'd challenge you to sum up John McDonnell. I mean, as a mentor, as a coach, as a person, what one word comes to mind just to encapsulate everything that Coach McDonnell stood for?
That's a tough one. I guess greatness. I know that may not be real original, but he was just really great at everything he did, and he created a great legacy and great program, and he helped a lot of people do great things, both in sports and then afterwards. If you look at a lot of the former Razorbacks, they've been very successful, whether it's in business or a lot of them have gone into coaching. A lot of the foreign athletes have stayed here in Arkansas, which I think really speaks to what a great experience they had coming here to compete for John. So I guess greatness would be the word that pops into my head.
But I mean, it is interesting too to see that the last national title won by a track team at Arkansas was the women's side, and women's track has kind of surpassed men's track, right? In the last few years, would that be accurate?
Well, yeah, Chris Buckman had a heck of a job replacing John McDonnell. Chris won the indoor title here in 2013, and he's come close to winning a few others. But Lance Harden did a good job here from the day one, winning SEC titles and competing for national titles. But they finally broke the door down in 2015. I think they won their first indoor, and now, they've won 6. I think it's 5. Lance has done an incredible job. He just got inducted to the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame here recently, very, very deservedly so. And, I'd say he's emerged from John's shadow for sure.
All right, Bob, we'll leave it there. And maybe next time we'll be talking about Arkansas and the College World Series. And appreciate your time and really your memories of John McDonnell. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
Great talk. You guys take care.
Bob Holt, Democrat-Gazette. And he's the only guy we've ever talked about track here. Well, you really know reasons why you bring on someone that has a real range of knowledge of sports.
And that's Bob Holt right there.
Bob Holt. There's no doubt about it. Hey, nothing says summer fun like fishing with a Thill Bobber with the family. That's America's favorite floats by Thill. They're available in a variety of sizes and colors. Premium balsa wood floats, also made by the thousands at Pradco in Fort Smith, Arkansas. They're great at detecting the slightest bites by fish and work great in tandem with crickets and redworms. Available at Walmart, Bass Pro Shops Academy, LearnNet.com, and tackle stores everywhere. America's favorite floats by Thill. 877-377-6963. Wrapping up the first hour after this.